Now, before we build out our home page, we have to add one other critical feature to enable it to happen. So if we think about our home page as one big discovery page that allows me to curate different items that would end up showing up on that home page, right? So the idea here is going to be a list of items and another list of items and then another list of items. So basically a list of lists, right? So we want to have a query set that has its own query set. Now, the idea here is going to be that we can mix between movies and TV shows. So not just movies, not just TV shows, but a mix of both, which means that we're not really going to be using those proxy models for this. So the question is, what else about these lists that we'll probably need to have? Well, realistically, each instance of a list item will probably need a title. Like we could even say featured comedies or something along those lines, or like top suggestions of the week, or these are our 5-star picks, those kinds of names for the title. And perhaps we want to have more of a description to that. Perhaps we only want to select ones that are published. So very similar to the movies playlist, the videos, all that. We'll have the published things. And then we also would have inside of there whether or not these are related to this particular list of items. So whether it's movies or TV shows, and then we would repeat that over and over again. So this means that we have an opportunity to update our playlist models in some way. So your intuition might be, well, why don't I just create one model and I'll call it something like class featured, and it'll be models.model. And we will go ahead and say our playlists that are going to come in here, because remember, playlists can be movies, TV shows, seasons, or this other one playlist. But I'm going to go ahead and say playlists can be equals to models.mini to mini field and pass in, the playlist itself. And we could then do blank being true, and then we would also have maybe other options in here as well. But for now, we could think of it this way. But the problem is we still want to have some of these other attributes to this featured list. And in fact, when we were creating the playlist type choices, we said we were going to have a playlist as an option, which was a playlist of playlists. So that's actually the method we want to go about doing this here. And this actually makes the most sense, not just to not repeat ourselves over and over, but also if you're in a movie and you want to show related movies, you want to curate related movies to the particular movie that's being shown, that's going to be a good option for another mini-to-mini field. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out this mini-to-mini field here, and we'll just place it right underneath parent, and this time we're going to call it related equals to this mini-to-mini field. Cool. So in this mini-to-many field, I also want to have a related name. In this case, I'm going to say related. Now, why is it that I have a related name? Hopefully, it's already very clear. One of the reasons, or the primary reason, is the fact that we already have a foreign key to ourselves. So our mini-to-many field has to be referenced to itself so it can use all of the other playlists, and thus we have our related name. So now, just like our videos so now we're actually pulling inspiration from our videos, not from our parent foreign key, but literally from our videos. We also want to have another through model, right, which will take into account the parent playlist or the actual current object instance playlist, and then the related object that we're going to end up using. Now, this to me is definitely on the more advanced side. So if you're confused at all, I totally get it. Bear with me, and we'll see what happens when we actually build it out. Okay, so let's go down to this playlist item that was for that videos mini-to-many field through model. We're going to go ahead and say class playlist related item. And it's going to be models.model. Okay, so instead of calling it playlist related item, I'm just going to call it playlist related. Now you could say related playlist, but I want to make sure that I put playlist first so I know it's relevant to the original playlist. So the first thing is we actually pass in the default playlist itself. So this is going to be the parent instance, right? So if it's the Avengers movie, it's going to be that playlist. And then all of the things that are related to it will be under the field related. And this is going to be another foreign key right back to playlist, right? So very similar to what's going on up here, but since we, in our many-to-many field, we're referencing self, which means the current model, that means that we need, in our many-to-many field, to use that through lookup, we need to have two instances of the actual playlist model. Okay, so we come in here just like this, and I'll give it a related name because, just like in any other model, when you have foreign keys to the exact same model, you absolutely need to have a related name. And again, I'll go ahead, and this time I'll say related item. Now the reason I'm using a different related name than what I had up here has to do with the fact that, well, I have this one up here, right? So I do have a related item. I don't want to conflict with whatever related name I passed in here, which might have became clear to you before when you did videos if for some reason you use the same related names across. But Django will do a check for us and tell us whether or not that's correct. So there we go. We now have our primary playlist and then what's related to it as this particular object. So I'm going to go ahead and add in my order and timestamp. Okay, so if I just stopped here and got rid of that many-to-many field, we would be fine. This is actually doing what we are hoping for it to do. We are actually doing the actual list of playlists. So it just doesn't have the title. It doesn't have some of the other features that we wanted. But the idea here is, you know, what's the name of the playlist? And then all of the things that are related to it. This query set would give us that data. Hopefully that's clear. I don't know if it is. Let's go ahead and scroll back up to our many-to-many field though, and now pass in that through model. So through and into playlist related. Use the string so the model stop high knows it's down later on this particular model. So we'll go ahead and run python manage.py make migrations, python manage.py migrate, and then python manage.py test playlists. Okay, so I have no errors so far. Now I pretty much made a really easy related field. It's not really that hard at this point. It might be confusing, but what we did wasn't groundbreaking, hopefully. So let's go ahead and go into the admin now and bring in our related playlist item right here, this playlist related, and we'll bring it in as another admin inline. Much like we had this playlist item inline, I'm going to go ahead and say class playlist related inline, and this is admin.tabular inline as well. And we'll give it a model, and we'll go ahead and say extra equaling to 0, literally doing the same thing. Okay, so this one I'm going to go ahead and actually put it above the inline. So this one's the video one. I'm going to put it above the video one. So we'll save it, and let's make sure our server is running. So python manage.py run server, and let's go ahead and we get an error. Okay, so right off the bat, we've got playlist related has more than one foreign key to playlist. You must specify an FK underscore name. Okay, so this is caused in the admin, the related playlist inline, right? So that has to do with this right here, right? So there are two different foreign keys to the model that we are trying to use right here. And our tabular inline doesn't know which it should use as the tabular inline, as in the field that we want to set. So we could choose either one of these things. Which field is it that we're wanting to set in the admin? And that's going to be this related field. Then the admin by default will set the playlist itself, the object that we're trying to add related items to. So let's come in here and just say FK name equals to that related. And I got this literally from this argument here. I didn't look at the documentation. It just told me, hey, you need to set an FK name. And I knew, hey, we have a model with two foreign keys to the exact same model. We need to see how to set it, how to tell the admin on how to handle that. So I save it, and let's go ahead and take a look in the admin. And if we come down in here, go into playlists now, add playlist. If we scroll to the bottom, I should see playlists, not playlist items, but rather playlist related. I should see actual playlist names in here, right? Might have changed a little bit from the last video, but the idea here is now I actually do see these playlist items. So I'm going to go ahead and create my first featured playlist. So I'll just call this playlist featured 1, type being playlist, absolutely. And I don't really want anything else. Maybe I have published. I'm going to go ahead and hit save, go back into featured playlist, and now go into playlist relateds and notice that I can reference myself or this particular playlist. So what I actually want to have happen here is I do not want the type being this current playlist, right? In fact, I don't want the related playlist, this foreign key right here, to quite literally ever have the option of the choice, the type choice of playlist. I really just want movie or show, right? So that's kind of how I want to limit this item. And so this part is actually a little tricky to get right for two things. So let's go ahead and just get it right for one thing at first. So I'm going to define limit choices to, and I'm actually going to call this PR, as in playlist related, limit choices to, and we want to return back a dictionary of some kind. So in my case, I'll go ahead and say type, and this is going to be our playlist. And then it's playlist type choices dot, and we'll go ahead and say movie. Okay, so in our related field here now, I'll go ahead and pass in limit choices to and pass that argument there. So we save that. What do we do when we make the changes to our models? We run our migrations, then we migrate, and then we run the server. Okay, cool. So let's go back into our admin now. Go to add another playlist, and still giving me all of those playlist items here. So that's not ideal. I actually wanted it to show me the related items. So perhaps I actually did something wrong on the admin. Maybe the foreign key name should actually be not related, but playlist. Let's try that. So I saved and changed the admin. Now it actually shows me the related field. This is where we just test things out and we hopefully start to develop the intuition to do what I just did. Now when I go to add another playlist, now it only shows me, hey, what do you know? It's just the Avengers. That's cool. So that also means that this limit choices to is another handy feature that we need every once in a while to our foreign keys to actually limit what those choices would be. This is a very useful item and really makes sense right here. So let's go ahead and actually have two different kinds of choices. How do I actually have two? Well, this is another really useful thing, and it's called a Q lookup. These are for more complex lookups. I'll explain this a little bit more in a second. So we're going to go ahead and come down to these limit choices to again, and this time I'm going to do Q with a parenthesis sign around this, and take type out of a key and just say type equals to that. And then I can use this same concept and say a pipe there that's a straight up and down line and paste that in here and I think it's show. I think that's what we called it. It might be TV show. Let's go ahead and take a look. And sure enough, it is show. So scrolling all the way back down, now we have what's called a complex query. So what's going on here is actually very similar to doing something like playlist related, or really in our case, it's playlist.objects.filter. And then the first thing that we did was type equals to, this type right here. Right? And what this complex query does is I can actually pass that into this filter and it will also work the same way, but now it's giving me an either or filter. So it's going to be either the movie or the show, and that gives me this nice query set. So the other cool thing about doing this kind of lookup is the other way on how you can do it is by actually grabbing two different query sets. So QS equals to that and QS2 equals to that. And we'll go ahead and just pass in show. So notice all of the typing I have to do here. The final QS would then be the combination of these two, again, with a pipe, with that line there. So it's very similar to just doing that. But this is actually a little bit more efficient. Using the Q lookups is a lot more efficient to do multiple field lookups like this. Now, I did multiple fields it is multiple field lookups, even though I only use the exact same field type, right? I could actually add other things in here as well, like published. I could definitely add that limit choices too, that my playlist related will only show published items. But I'm not going to do that in this case. I just want to show the shows and the TV shows. And there we go. So now I can come in here and add, hey, this is now my actual featured playlist. So I come in here and just do it up, right? So featured playlist, that's it. We hit save. Now I actually have something I can put on my homepage. Now, there is another thing that I want to change about the admin as it relates to this, is I don't need all of those fields, right? I shouldn't have to actually change the playlist type either, because I believe we default to that. So let's just verify that we do default to that playlist type being playlist. And sure enough, we do, which means that I don't have to override and save it, much like I did with a lot of my proxy models, or all of my proxy models, really. So let's actually decide which fields I want for these featured playlists. Title, yes, I definitely want title. So fields right here, and it's going to be title. And let's go ahead and say description. I'm pretty sure we'll want that. And if we did have a image of some kind, I probably would put that in here too. I want the slug, and I probably want to have the state, whether or not it's published, and maybe the last one being active. Okay, so we save that, refresh in here. Now it's a lot closer to what I would use in production. I mean, this is probably what I would end up using in production. Perhaps I would update my related items here just a little bit, but as of now, this is really, really solid. So my intuition, though, prior to actually adding this new field, I'm going to tell you, was to not add the new field, but rather just add inlines to my proxy models, like the TV show proxy and the movie proxy. What that ended up doing was treating the playlist like the parent object. So this is where actually getting some more familiarity with Django does really help, and also trying to break and unpack all of the things we just did. So what I should do is actually run all of the tests, but we're almost out of time, so I really want to just finish off a few things related to our views and our ratings to make sure that that's working. But before I do that, let's go ahead and finish off this home view.